Hi, I'm Charlie, and you're listening to the Fifth Period Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jurassic Park. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome back to Fifth Period, the film podcast hosted by two media teachers, where each week we take a student-selected film and put it under the microscope. My name is Mr. Brown, and with me as always is...
Mr. Whittle. We are going back. We are not going back to the future. We have been back to the future before.
Yeah.
We are going back to the very first film we started Film Appreciation Club with.
That's right.
At the start of 2022, we opened proceedings with a film that I put forward. We hadn't as yet surveyed the students, but I thought I'd kick things off with Jurassic Park. And we're back here again on a student recommendation, which is the way we like to run it.
Yeah, so clearly they were enthusiastic about your very first choice, and it was up against some other big contenders this week, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had a feeling. So we put together a bit of a poll on the pending suggestions that we hadn't yet played out. There was about 8 different films there to choose from.
You know, I was really hoping Tron would win.
Sorry, Rolls. Putting the list together, I did think that the People's Choice would go to Jurassic Park. But there were some other good ones in there. Very happy to see Spaceballs, people.
Well, I think Back to the Future got another mention, didn't it?
3.
Back to the Future 3. I'm really stoked with this choice. It's a classic, right?
Yes, yeah.
If you are one of our regular podcast listeners and haven't yet subscribed, do get on it. It does help us out, but it also helps you to stay up to date with future releases. Also, if you're new to the podcast and like what you hear, then go check out the rest of the channel for a whole playlist of past episodes that you can catch up on.
Goodie.
Now, because this will be our last official episode for the term, we will be looking back on the films that we've watched and giving our overall Term 2 rankings.
Yeah, so we did this at the end of Term 1, and then since then we've had 10 films, including today's, that we will be giving a ranking on. Yes.
Very, very excited. But with that, our main discussion of Jurassic Park, a student appreciation, weekly watches, and tantalizing trailers. We have a dinosaur-sized episode for you. So if you want to skip ahead to anything, I will leave time codes in the description below.
Yeah.
Now, we have a very special student appreciation today because our guest intro was actually read by someone that I had only officially met last Friday. So big shout out to Charlie, who has recently become a regular at Film Club, but I had not had the pleasure of meeting them properly until now. So super enthusiastic, and I very much appreciated them putting their hand up in a group that was a little bit shy. Hopefully this will get your whole group keen to get involved in future episodes, but I love meeting new people at Film Club. It's one of the best things about Film Club. I found out Charlie really likes anime, which I know isn't really your thing, Wits, but also very keen on the romance genre. So maybe we'll get some romance suggestions next term.
Cool. Yeah, no, I love our turnouts have been really strong the last few months. And yeah, looking around the room, there is a bunch of faces that I don't know. And I would love to get to know more of the people in the room. So maybe the next film club will have some kind of different approach so that we can have a bit more of an interactive kind of hello to everyone. You've planted the seed of inspiration for maybe the first film club back in Term 3. Do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we jump in?
Sounds good.
Let's travel back to 1993 for Jurassic Park. Now, this film based on the Michael Crichton book.
Yes.
Have you read the book?
No, I haven't read the book. I remember Michael Crichton being a very big name around the time in terms of novels. He has done a few other books. He's written a few other books.
Jurassic Park 2. This time it's personal.
The Rising Sun. Do you know that film? That was a film that came out pretty close after Jurassic Park. Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery.
I don't know it.
Yeah,
I love me some Sean Connery.
Yeah, it was pretty good, but it was touted as by the same guy who wrote Jurassic Park, but this one was sans dinosaurs. Now, by the way, guys, we haven't done our spoiler alert on this film yet.
Oh,
so,
yes.
Just a spoiler, this film does contain dinosaurs.
That's an important one to know.
All right,
yeah.
and the dinosaurs don't behave appropriately.
I'm just picturing it as if it's like a university
Bad dinosaur.
type film.
No, yeah. I was thinking
They're
more...
pulling pranks on the dean.
Yeah.
Yes! Take that, Bitterman!
But apparently James Cameron also wanted the rights to this, but has since come out and said that Spielberg was the right choice for it, because he really wanted to do more of a horror-based film, whereas he thinks it was the right call to capture the majesty and the wonder of the island like Spielberg did.
Well, I think if I think back to that era, I think James Cameron probably made the right career choice by instead focusing on Terminator 2 Judgment Day, because that happened to be one of the biggest films ever made.
What's that one? I haven't heard of that one.
So that's 1992. So yeah, we're around the same era, right?
Yeah. We get the opening sequence where they are transporting the dinosaur, and it's a pretty epic opening. Considering the film isn't supposed to be a monster movie type film, this sequence feels very much like a horror film.
Did you know what it did feel like to me as well?
Oh yeah?
A bit Indiana Jones.
Oh, with one Harrison Ford, is it? Your favorite actor?
So this is obviously Spielberg, this film. This is Spielberg after Hook, which we have also done on the podcast.
We weren't hooked.
No, we were far from hooked. Prior to that, he did Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. So we have covered Spielberg in this era quite a bit, but there's elements, and we see it in this opening shot, that is classic Spielberg. It's very much that Close Encounters of the Third Kind, into E.T., into, like I said, Indiana Jones. He's got a look to his films.
He definitely does.
But, and I'll say it now, I think that this film starts a new era for him. He does really take it up a notch in Jurassic Park. I mean, he always does it where his target audience are young people. Like, he certainly is trying to give that awe factor to a younger audience. I think everyone of all ages can appreciate this film, but certainly the wonder that comes from some magnificent kind of idea such as dinosaurs walking around, the primary audience would be kids, right? Yeah. Same as Hook, same as Indiana Jones, same as E.T. Like, it's for everyone. It's their family films, but primary audience would be younger people.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I was listening to the Weekly Planet Boys, the podcast I am quite fond of, and they recently did a Caravan of Garbage on Temple of Doom, and they were talking about how the PG-13 spawned from the making of that film because a lot of Spielberg's films were aimed at kids, but then Temple of Doom was so dark.
Yeah, people came out of that cinema going, what is going on? That is not what I want my kids to see. And so the heart getting ripped out and stuff like that,
they couldn't give it
right?
the G rating, so they had to bring in the PG-13 one. It's for kids, but it's for older kids.
I think there should be a separate rating for whenever a Harrison Ford movie is out. Like,
PG amazing.
Yeah.
You were going to go for something more derogatory?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so in this sequence, panic and fear is awesome in like the acting.
Yeah, in a sense, I do think this is obviously a film I grew up with, and looking back on it now, there is a bit of a cheese level to this scene for me. Like, it does, it looks like a soundstage. It doesn't look cheap. I think it's unfair to say it looks cheap, but it certainly doesn't look overly realistic. The lighting and the set design and stuff. I couldn't immerse myself in the world at this stage.
Right.
I can later on. In fact, in the next scene I can. But this one stood out to me as like, oh, it looks staged. Because it is, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, that's interesting because we were talking about overlooking that sort of stuff last week with North by Northwest when you're engrossed in the story. So I suppose that speaks to this scene just doesn't really do it for you.
Well, it's also because I had a memory of this film being so huge in my mind. And it does, like I said, later on, particular scenes especially really do put me there. This one just kind of, I was a bit out of sorts starting off with this.
Right.
Then obviously the shoot her from our...
Everything that sort of British type character says is it's very exaggerated.
Is he meant to be British?
I think so.
It's like
he
a
definitely
mix
has a
of
British accent.
Brit, Aussie, South African...
Actually, you're right. There is a bit of South African in there.
Yeah.
But I think he's supposed to be like your outback Australian kind of character, but his accent doesn't say that.
No.
Just his outfit.
Yeah.
Totally fair that it doesn't land. Like, I love this film, but I definitely have a few criticisms as I'm going through today.
Yeah.
I like that you don't see the dinosaur. I mean, number one, they're saving on budget and everything like that, but it's the Jaws effect that Spielberg obviously mastered, where the monster is scarier when you can't see it.
Yeah. I also like that this is putting it out there that there's a smaller dinosaur that is deemed more dangerous than our existing understanding of the Tyrannosaurus Rex being the scariest dinosaur.
Yeah.
Now, Obviously, there's a T-Rex scene later on. It's very scary. But yeah, this is the Velociraptor that is getting shipped in at the start. Dinosaurs in cinema, they weren't a thing where we learnt about dinosaurs. Like, as a kid, you all know about dinosaurs from books and stuff like that. But I went looking for a film that kind of represented dinosaurs the same way Jurassic Park did. And there wasn't anything. There wasn't, like, there's obviously your monster films and stuff like that. And then there's some films where dinosaurs appear. But there's nothing that really profiles dinosaurs the way that Jurassic Park did. And I do remember it being a game changer in terms of people understanding dinosaur history in general. So it's a really important film in that sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting too because Spielberg loved dinosaurs. And there's behind-the-scenes footage and stuff of him talking about the first time he went to the museum and saw all of the old dinosaur bones. And so he had a fascination with them, which is why he felt so strongly about this movie not being a monster movie and about it being a real spectacle and the wonder and awe of it.
Yeah.
And you definitely get that. Like, for every scary sequence, there is another sequence where it's just like, look how beautiful and majestic this all is.
Yeah, for sure.
But yes, we get a very big juxtaposition from the first scary sequence to the lawyer just trying to stand up on the raft.
Yeah, and
he's getting pulled along.
This scene I felt in because it does feel like it's more real. It's obviously daytime, and then they represent the jungle-y kind of area that he's in, and he arrives at the archaeology site.
Yep. And they go above and beyond to make him seem ill-equipped for anything.
Yeah.
He can't stand up on the raft, and then he slips on the rocks as he's going through. And there's a couple of funny lines later where they're just like, just in case you forget, this guy's an idiot.
Well, that's something that Spielberg does very well, is very clear character development.
Yeah.
And we see that with Sam Neill.
Yes. We meet Grant and Sattler at the same time, and they have sort of an ambiguous relationship in this film.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reference to having kids that comes later on in this scene. There's a mutual respect for their profession. I certainly have a mutual respect for both of these actors because I think both Sam Neill and Laura Dern casting royalty. Like, they did so well with selecting these guys, and both of them just deliver.
But they were both not super well known at this point too. I think that really works in favor of the film.
Yeah.
Like they'd done a couple of things, but they weren't nearly as big as obviously they are now.
No, this was the big breakthrough.
But I think if you had sort of a big kind of blockbuster star in this, it would pull you out of the world a little bit.
Like a Harrison Ford. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because he's so good. You just, you wouldn't believe it. He's not a paleontologist.
But I do agree. Like, I think that the casting choice in the strength of their acting, but also the level of realism that these two bring to the screen, really wise.
It establishes very early on that they hate computers, which kind of foreshadows all of the technology failing them at the park.
This is what I'm talking about with character development. Like, Alan has a traditional view on everything. He doesn't participate in anything that is not just the tried and true tested way of doing things. He also has a reluctance towards children.
Yes. Yes, so both his inexperience with children and technology is made so blatantly obvious in this scene. Firstly, he taps on the monitor, the TV screen, and the guy freaks out. He's like, what's he doing? It's just an old Panasonic TV. It's fine. He can do that. But yes, you're right. He traumatizes a kid in this scene with the claw.
Yep.
I love that Allie's just in the background shaking her head like, oh, Alan, traumatizing this kid.
Well, the kid wanted to get lippy and, needed to understand the reality of dinosaurs.
Yes, yes. There is a bizarre fan theory that kid then grows up to be the Chris Pratt character in the later films of the movie.
That's kind of cool. I like that.
I mean, it just speaks to how ridiculous people are in terms of coming up with these fan theories.
Yeah.
Like, there's no link whatsoever between this kid and that character, but you leave a film for long enough and people will come up with anything, right? Grant saying he obviously hates kids in this sequence too foreshadows the fact that he's going to be looking after the kids later on.
Yes.
He says they smell. And I agree with him. They do smell. Ellie's like, no, they don't.
No, but babies smell.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then sometimes little kids can smell as well.
Yeah, I mean, we work at a high school. Sometimes
that's
they
a
can
different
smell.
story.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Then we get the introduction of Hammond. And it's a good introduction. Like, we learn a lot about Hammond very quickly. But also, I feel like we learn he's a bit of a jerk pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's a certain element of, like, ignorance.
We've already found out that he hates inspections. He's negligent.
Yeah.
But he turns up at this site. Granted, he is funding them, so he's not a complete jerk. But he lands the helicopter on the site that they're digging. He drinks their champagne.
Yep.
I mean,
They were saving that.
of course they were. Basically says he owns the island. Well, he says he owns it, but then he says he's leasing it in the same sentence.
Oh, does he? I missed that part.
Then invites them to come check it out. He's obviously trying to open up a theme park, and he wants to get their approval for, is it authenticity purposes or to convince the lawyer and investors to that everything's sound and all good to go. And then we cut to Newman.
Yes.
His character name is Dennis, but I can only see him as Newman.
In my head, it was Hello, Newman.
Hello, Newman.
Hello, Jerry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun fact about his character throughout this, apparently all of the outfits that he wears in the film, and there's only about 3 changes, but they all match the main character's outfits from the Goonies.
That's cool.
Yeah, so you should look it up because it's pretty interesting.
That's great. I love this cut to this scene where he calls over the who is this other guy? Dogson.
You know that character returns to the franchise.
No, I didn't know that. I do remember seeing the second one, maybe even the third. I don't know which ones I'm talking about.
Oh, so there's the original trilogy, and then they've made the new trilogy with like the Chris Pratt.
Right. So no, I've seen the original trilogy.
Okay.
And I remember quality dropping off from 1 to 2.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a
3.
soft spot for him.
I remember enjoying number 2 somewhat. That Jeff Goldblum's a bit more of a focus in the second one, right?
Yeah, well, him and Julianne Moore are sort of the leading characters.
Yeah. And I remember seeing the first of the new trilogy.
Right, that's really the only one of the new trilogy you should watch.
Well, even then, I was a bit so-so on it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the first of the new trilogy does an okay job of sort of paying fan service to the original, just kind of rebooting. Like, it's the same idea.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the other 2 are just hot garbage.
And the last one, they managed to bring Sam Neill and Laura Dern back, didn't they?
That's
they
the one that Dodson returns in.
Crapped the bed on it. Is that
Completely.
what you're saying? Yeah, right.
Completely. What a
that's
waste
shame. Yeah.
of such star power.
Well, so we are definitely talking about the best of the 6, though, right now, aren't we?
Correct.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that he doesn't want his name used, and then Newman's like, "Hey, everybody, it's Dodson." Like, nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
I really like the Dennis character. Like, I think he's really funny. Most of the lines
really
of dialogue
is.
he says are very, very amusing.
At this point, obviously, 1993, everyone knew him as Newman as well. Like, Seinfeld was, 4 years into its run now? As a character, he'd been introduced in the show. So when he showed up in this movie, I'm sure people were pretty happy to see him doing something outside of the Newman character. It's very Newman-esque in many ways, but I don't think he could do much else besides that, right?
Yeah. Look, I love Wayne Knight, but he's got that
he's
one.
great.
He's a one-track pony.
Yeah.
He also makes fun of Dogson's hat. He's just ripping into him. But I love how amused he is by, like, the shaving cream. The shaving cream also makes a return in the latest film, inexplicably.
Oh, okay.
I think Spielberg originally had an idea to bring the shaving cream back. That's why when Dennis loses it, it kind of holds on the shot of the mud covering it up.
I was actually trying to remember, when that happens, I thought, that may be what is then used in a later film.
It was the original idea, but then because he wrote it while the second book was being written at the same time, it kind of diverted from that plot point.
Sure.
But yes, it does return in the latest film, which doesn't make any sense because it would have been lost on the island. They don't explain it at all. Dodson just has it. Shaving cream, by the way, is our code word for the day, or code words. But interesting about that was just a prop that someone working on the crew just went and found while they were shooting. So they're shooting out in like the Hawaiian Islands, and he just needed a prop. So they went to a local store and he said he liked the packaging. It looked good.
I wonder if Spielberg responded to the shaving cream can the same way that Wayne Knight's character does. When, like,
He's so giddy and
giddiness.
excited.
Yeah.
Compartmentalized inside. You guys Oh, that's great.
He's got such a great line at the end of the scene where he says, "Don't get cheap on me. That was Hammond's mistake."
For paying the bill, yeah, I love it. Yep.
I do wonder, is Dennis really that bad of a guy, or is he just undervalued as a staff member?
He does try and put it forward in the latest scene that he isn't looked after properly, and Hammond says, "Your money problems aren't my money problems."
That's a great line, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's like, "I do sympathize with your money problems, but they are just that, your problem."
Anyway, we're jumping ahead because we then cut to
the helicopter. Enter
and we
Ian Malcolm,
aka Jeff Goldblum.
He is just Jeff Goldbluming all over the screen, isn't he?
I love him so much. No. Even though he is a chaostician. I love that title. That's so cool. And then obviously he gets to refer to chaos theory later on as well. He is likable from the outset.
He's so charming, flirting with Sattler. She immediately buys into it. He does that little laugh in the helicopter. It's so good. Put that soundbite in. But yes, we have these beautiful shots of the island from the helicopter.
And these shots are the ones that are most memorable for me. I remember as a kid seeing this film going, this feels awe-inspiring. This is big in scale. And then we talk about the music. John Williams, who, in case not everyone's aware, I'm a bit of a so-so. Like, sometimes he's fine. Like, I do need to put it out there. Like,
I would say originally it seemed like you hated John Williams, but you've since come back and said that there are times where it worked for you.
Yeah, this being one of them. So, like, you know, when we are just seeing scenic shots of this massive scale of the island, the helicopters coming in, it really does make it seem plausible that Hammond's got an island that's fit for dinosaurs to live on, right? The music complements it for sure.
As I said, they were filming on a couple of different islands in Hawaii. There was a hurricane, and it was pretty massive. They had to shut down the set. The hotel they were staying in, they were all escorted into the big ballroom together. And apparently, they were just all huddled in. There was this real community vibe. Spielberg was there. Jeff Goldblum tells this story of Spielberg there with a torch, and he's talking about the difference between romance and horror, and he just holds the torch under his face for horror, and then puts it above his head, and he's like, and now it's romance. And everyone's just gathered around as he's telling these stories. You hear mixed stories about it. Laura Dern talks about it being a really great experience in terms of building community when you go through something like that. And Sam Neill tells a story of, it was just really boring. So, depending on who you ask, it was a bigger deal to some than others. But apparently they had to shut down production. A lot of things were destroyed and they had to kind of rebuild it back up. So it would have had a pretty big impact on their budget, I would imagine. Although Spielberg did say that Attenborough slept through it all.
This is Richard Attenborough, who plays Hammond. Right.
Yes.
He slept through it all.
Yeah, he's like, I've seen worse.
Yeah. He is an impressive actor.
As the helicopter's landing, he gives that Yahoo!
Oh, yes. And Alan's trying to put on the seatbelt.
What better way to hammer home the point? He's no good with technology. He can't even do a seatbelt.
Yeah.
They land on the island. They get in the Jeeps. I love the Jeeps.
Yeah, I love the Jeeps. Love the logo. The logo is so important for the branding of the film, obviously. It looks cool.
It does.
It's really cool. And yeah, the Jeeps, they jump in the Jeeps. I realized how quickly they get into things with this film. Very fast-paced. Yeah.
I like that the final line that we get before you are introduced to the dinosaurs is the lawyer's really reluctant at this point about the backers, the investors for the park. And Hammond says in 48 hours he'll be accepting the lawyer's apology. I doubt it. But yes, then we are introduced to the dinosaurs and immediately everyone, including the lawyer, is just captivated by them.
What I love about this is Sam Neill and Laura Dern's reactions to what's going on. We, the audience, experience it through their response. You know, the reveal doesn't come until they're both looking at it. At the Brachiosaurus. I think that the first one's the Brachiosaurus.
I think so.
CGI Brachiosaurus. This is early days of CGI, but they did a pretty good job on this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So originally the wide shots like that were going to be done with stop motion by Phil Tippett. But another person working on it, Dennis Murren, I think is how you pronounce it, was able to digitally animate them. And Kathleen Kennedy saw he just kind of did a previs thing for her. And she convinced Spielberg, no, this is the way of the future. You got to look at this. And he pretty much made Tippett obsolete. Not only changing this film, but the industry altogether. Yeah. This was the first sort of computer-generated animation, and it all took off from here.
Well, this film uses a good blend of both existing kind of puppet animatronics and CGI as well. And I think they complement each other in this film.
Yeah, so Spielberg really wanted to do as much as possible with animatronics, or as the lawyer would call them,
autoerotica. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, he wanted to do as much as possible, but obviously in big wide shots like this, you couldn't do it. Stop motion was the only thing available at that point. I will say Phil Tippett didn't get fired off the set. They still kept him on because he did a lot of helping with the previs stuff. He would do some stop motion work to kind of fill the gaps of what the computer animation couldn't do at that point. But yeah, going back to their reaction to it, I love how Alan and Ali both take off their glasses to look up at the dinosaur, despite the fact that it's quite a sunny day. And if you were looking up at the dinosaur, you'd probably want to keep your glasses on.
Okay.
But there's this great story of Jeff Goldblum being directed by Spielberg in this sequence.
He'd never rehearsed. Ready, Jeff? Okay, there you are. You're seeing the dinosaur. Oh my gosh, just keep rolling. You're looking at it. You can't believe what you're seeing. Is it real? It now strikes you funny. You don't even know why. I enjoyed that a lot.
And for me, I was like, it's so funny that Spielberg was doing this to Jeff Goldblum, because often that's just what it looks like for Jeff Goldblum to be acting in a scene anyway.
This scene is pretty iconic in terms of what you remember from Jurassic Park. Like, I think with this and the T-Rex scene would be the two that come to mind.
It was revolutionary at the time, and it still holds up. And I like that they don't just use big wide shots to show you the dinosaurs. They also use these really low angle shots from the perspective of Alan and Ali looking up at them, and it makes them look so powerful and huge. Even their reactions to it, they're like little kids.
Yep.
And then he's like, oh, we'll move on to the T-Rex enclosure in there.
What
have a T-Rex? Say it again.
We have a T-Rex.
At that point is when I go, I love you, John Hammond. I love this character so much.
You just love Richard Attenborough.
Well, I don't know anything else that he's done.
Oh, Miracle on 34th Street?
I mean, I know that film, he plays Santa in that film, right?
Yeah, he's pretty much the same character.
Yeah, but there's not many other films that you know him from. There's 5 films that were notable, and then the rest of his back catalogue are B and C grade films. Yeah. From this film, I'm like, he's a great character actor.
He really is.
Really strong, yeah.
Yeah, it's Richard Attenborough doing his best David Attenborough in this. He even says at this point, welcome to Jurassic Park. And then we get the transition through. And that's something too, by the way, transitions in this film are awesome. I've got a couple noted as we go through, but often a scene would end with a line that would then link it to the next scene.
Yes.
And so he says, welcome to Jurassic Park. And then we get the main Jurassic Park building. Mm-hmm. And how awesome is that lobby area with the big T-Rex skeleton?
Yep.
Very, very cool.
Still a bit under construction. I like that they had some guy up on a scaffold there just to show us, it's weeks away from being open, guys.
I'm pretty sure, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that was a way to save on completing the set.
That's cool.
Yeah, how fun is that?
Yeah.
And then we get the explanation, the little tour. Hammond interacts with himself. Now, I have a logistical question for you. How does this work? Is Hammond going to be there every time someone goes through that ride to talk to himself?
Talk to himself.
He's just there on loop?
That's what it's implying, is that Hammond will, once the place is open, he will just be standing in that ride. That ride, so he can do the pricking of the finger.
The DNA guy, he reminded me of, do you remember the Microsoft paperclip?
Yes.
Clippy?
Yep.
Yeah, he reminds me of that. But yeah, I like the explanation that they give for the cloning, with the mosquitoes. I buy it.
Yeah, I think that the way that they tell us, the audience, the justification for the dinosaurs existing. It's cool how they tie it in with the tour, and this is what they would have justifiably done at a theme park, but it does give that thorough explanation so that we buy into the fact that dinosaurs could be existing.
Yeah, and that was another major part of the film too. They wanted it to be conceivable.
Yeah.
The idea of cloning and the idea of maybe they will be able to potentially bring back dinosaurs. Like Spielberg really believed that that was something that might be attainable.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to convey that through the science element. One thing I don't get though, if they're bringing back the dinosaurs through blood in the mosquitoes, how are they bringing back all the Jurassic plants?
Yes.
Plot holes.
Maybe that's a film, that a spin-off, Jurassic Plants.
Jurassic plants.
Yeah.
Yes, this is when the lawyer asks about the autoerotica instead of animatronics. Interesting joke for a PG film.
Yes.
I think it would have gone straight over the heads of the kids watching it.
Alan doesn't like just sitting there getting locked in, so he pushes off the bar and then just goes into the lab.
Bit of foreshadowing of him getting out of the Jeep later on.
Yep.
And yeah.
So Alan is
he's a go-getter.
He's a bit rebellious, but it's all in the name of science and curiosity.
That's what they used to call him, though, the bad boy of paleontology.
I notice also when they're in the lab that there's the voiceover of Samuel L. Jackson prior to us meeting his character.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yeah,
this.
he does the announcement over the PA there, and it's like, that can only be one person's voice for me. Yeah.
I'm tired of these dinosaurs on this island. It's really hard to say that quote without the swearing. It zaps all of the fun out of it.
Yep.
I have a problem with the limping in this film. And I'll get to each one as it comes up in the narrative. But at this point, I noticed often Hammond is limping around, just holding his stick up in the air. He's not actually using it. That's what the stick is for. You got to limp, you use your walking stick. That's not the worst one. We've got a couple more to come later on. The limping was poorly executed in this film.
I didn't notice.
That's what I'm here for, to point out all of these things.
Yep.
But yeah, we get the egg hatching, and that's nice kind of puppet work. It's it's quite magical. And
I looking at it now, I'm like, that kind of seems a bit over the top, but I remember fully buying into it at the time, and it's still fine now, but the reality is you wouldn't be getting that close in. I think they justify, doesn't Hammond say something like, whoever they interact with when they're first born, they're more likely to be drawn toward? Is that, he says that kind of line?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really pay off.
No, that's right.
We get B.D. Wong in this scene, who they're discussing about breeding.
You're implying that a group composed entirely of female animals will breed?
No, I'm simply saying that life finds a way.
Goldblum is putting it forward as like, it's all well and good that you think that you're going to cover all bases by breeding females in the lab, but life will find a way to procreate.
Which, again, isn't really a plot point that pays off in this film. Like, later on, we do see Sam Neill finds the eggs and realizes that is the case. But I feel like they only bring it up to explain how, in the sequel, the dinosaurs do sustain on the island.
Yes, yeah. I think also it's more about Goldblum's character being someone who challenges the decision Hammond's made for the design of Jurassic Park, which comes into play a bit later on, more so as well.
Actually, you're right there, because clearly the whole film is about how he's underprepared and doesn't know what he's up against. Yeah. So that's a great point, actually. They head to the raptors cage, and they mention how the raptors are kind of testing weaknesses in the fence, which speaks to them always learning and adapting, which then leads to them later on being able to open doors.
Clever girl.
There's this B-roll from this scene of Spielberg in the background as they're watching the raptors, and he's just got a megaphone and he's just making dinosaur noises, and it's the most ridiculous thing. I will put the soundbite in for sure because it's so funny, and people are just laughing off camera.
We had to pretend to be scared, and Steven Spielberg going through a bullhorn, you know.
Very, very funny. This is another one of those great transitions where they feed the cow to it, and then Hammond goes, "Who's hungry?" And then it cuts to them eating.
Oh, so they're sitting down for their Chilean sea bass.
Chilean sea bass.
Which I was quite appetized by. Ali, not so much. Her reaction to the plate being put in front of her was a bit so-so on the sea bass.
I think it's probably because she just saw a cow get devoured by some raptors, hey?
What, so she's jealous or she preferred the
wanted
cow?
The cow?
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it must have been.
Yep.
I really like this sequence. Even the more, I guess, mundane sequences, they're just sitting around chatting in here. But because of how good the dialogue is, I'm constantly drawn into it. So it's at this point where we realize that all three of them, don't agree with Hammond. And Goldblum really calls him out on it. Talks about him standing on the shoulders of geniuses and not taking any responsibility. Like, every line he says in this scene is so awesome.
Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
It's an important scene for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it's setting up the idea that Hammond is ill-prepared for what he was managing at the island, but also those ethical questions that come up around genetic recreation of animals, which is something that we as humans in reality have tackled for 30, 40 years now. I like the analogous nature of the questions in this fictitious film.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
It added a layer of depth.
But the other two also agree with Malcolm. And it's so funny because you can see Hammond in disbelief over it.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You're meant to come down here and defend me against these characters, and the only one I've got on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer.
It's so good.
It is good.
This is when the kids arrive, and of course, Grant looks more scared in this moment than he does facing any dinosaur in the film later on.
Yep.
They have this great shot of him on the stairs as the kids run in, and he looks terrified that they're there.
Mm-hmm. And then Ali looks to him to go, yep, more kids.
Well, and this is the thing. This is what I was saying before about their relationship being very ambiguous. Like, later on, he's talking to Malcolm, and he says, yes, they are together. But I'm not sure they are. Like, in sequel films, we know that she's gone off and got married. So either they were together in this film and then they split up, or they're just friends, or he likes her but nothing ever develops.
Yeah, right.
Why she wants him to like kids, I don't know. As we know, Spielberg's worked a lot with kids. Apparently he would play games with them. There's a funny kind of behind-the-scenes detail where he's explaining to Tim how to react to Grant. And he's like, picture him like a celebrity, like an actor, a big Hollywood star that you like. Like, he could be a Tom Cruise or a Kevin Costner. He could even be a Sam Neill. I agree with Alan that Tim is annoying at first, but he grows on you very quickly, like he does on Alan.
I liked Tim. I liked both of the kids, to be honest.
I don't really like Lex.
No? Their on-screen annoyance is tying in with what Alan is meant to be experiencing, and then, they become a bit lovable and he becomes a caring kind of figure for them. Certainly realistic depiction of kids.
Oh, I like both the actors, but I like Tim the character. I don't like Lex the character.
Okay.
Partly the film's fault. I don't think the film likes Lex either. They're constantly doing things throughout, her screaming at inopportune times that attracts the dinosaurs, or the dinosaur sneezes on her. It's all things like, we don't like you.
Most of the screaming at the dinosaurs comes from the two female characters within the film. I do think that there's maybe a bit of leaning towards old school sexism in terms of the Spielberg's direction to only have the females screaming. I'm pretty sure some males would scream as well.
How could he be sexist, though, when he has that great line where Sattler says, well, we'll have this debate about sexism later.
Yeah.
We can discuss sexism in survival situations when I get back.
We cut to Samuel L. Jackson. For the very first time, we see him on screen, and he says the great line, hold on to your butts. Oh, sorry, hold on to your butts, because he's always got a cigarette in his mouth.
Hold on to your butts.
This is very early days for Samuel L. Jackson. Pulp Fiction comes out the next year or the year after, 94 maybe.
He's more mundane than he usually is in this. Like, he's more pared back. But then, as his character goes on, that Samuel L. Jackson we know and love slips out.
He does a really good job in this film, keeping it modest in terms of what his acting can be.
I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane.
but it's still kind of got that undertones of he's going to blow, his frustrations there. Like when he gets to Dennis's desk and like,
look at this workstation,
and just like pushes
So
everything
good.
off. I love it.
Yeah, so maybe that's what the cigarette was. He was getting too big, so they were like, you always have to have a cigarette in your mouth when you're talking.
Possibly, yeah.
Jurassic Park gate, as they're coming in, that's a great set piece.
Yep.
Very, very cool. And it's a good way, too, to be like, we're going to build this awesome set piece here and just put it in the middle of the forest, and then it just makes the whole forest look like a theme park. Mm-hmm. It's a very clever way to kind of do a minimalist take on the theme park.
Yes. But then we have creepy Goldblum using his chaos theories in order to just rub Sattler's hand.
It's a mixture of creepy, but it's also just very condescending. He's educating her, but he's like touching her on the shoulder at the same time.
Yes.
But she's all about it. She's completely drawn in by the Goldblum charm.
Oh, well, but she wants Alan to pay attention as well. It's like, Alan, look at this. Like, you know, the water's dripping down my hand in different ways.
Yeah, she doesn't know that it's a move. She's just drawn in by the educational experience.
But then Alan ups the ante on the chaos theory and jumps out of the moving vehicle.
He does, yeah. And why wouldn't you? I mean, it's at this point that Malcolm has just said, now you do plan to have dinosaurs on your dinosaur tour, don't you? They haven't seen anything, so I'd jump out of the car too. It's a very boring tour.
Yes.
And they find the Triceratops.
This is one that sticks for me in terms of, I love this scene. Like, as a child, this was one of my favorites, the sick Triceratops.
Is it because of the giant pile of shit?
That's part of it. It's a fun little kind of gag to have them sifting through the shit.
It doesn't seem like the size of the pile of shit is relative to the size of the Triceratops.
Let's not get into that.
Did you notice that Tim is wearing kind of like the kid's version of Alan's outfit?
No, I didn't. Well, Tim did read his book.
Yeah.
So maybe like on the inside sleeve there was a photo of Alan and he's replicating his hero.
But it's just like he's wearing the short sleeve version of everything that Alan's wearing, and then he's got the little neckerchief as well.
Yeah.
Very, very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, the animatronic of the Triceratops is awesome.
Yeah.
So good.
I like that they were able to, because it's a sick Triceratops lying on its side, kind of allowed them to really use the animatronics effectively where they don't have to have the full movement replicated. It's just more flailing lightly, I guess is what you'd say. And it's not even flailing.
Lightly.
Yeah. Like it's moving awkwardly because it is crook.
Yeah. I don't know why Ian Malcolm does the sexy saunter up to the giant pile of shit.
That is one big pile of shit.
It's a great shot. He's like doing a swagger up to it. He's great. I love him so much. At this point, we get a really cool symbolic moment. Newman typing on the computer, doing some shady stuff. And then it cuts to them and lightning flashes and thunder goes off.
Nothing says danger is coming more than a storm into the storyline, right?
But again, it speaks to those great transitions. He like presses a key on the computer and then we get thunder and lightning. It's great. Really, really good. The security video that he's watching of the guy at the dock, though, you can see it's just like a QuickTime movie. That you see the bar like playing through. A bit of an oversight there.
Yeah.
Allie agrees that she'll stay with the Triceratops and they go try and head back. I don't know how they're able to turn the car around on the track. There's only one track. It just flips and starts going back the other way.
Yeah, no, I hadn't picked up on that. Yeah.
When the park opens, cars are just going to be bashing into each other all the time. They start talking about Allie and whether they're in a relationship. He asks him, "Are you married?" And Jeff Goldblum replies, "Occasionally."
I'm always on the lookout for a future ex-Mrs. Malcolm.
There's a statement here where it confirms that Allie and Alan are together.
Well, no, Alan says they're together. We don't
know.
know.
That's true.
Because he just doesn't want Jeff Goldblum.
Maybe, yeah. Yep. Still ambiguous. True.
He's a selfish man. Samuel L. Jackson says, with no panic whatsoever, "Oh, that's odd. The security system in the park that houses all of these monsters is out. Yeah. Oh, well."
Yeah, it is very dismissive, isn't it? Like, yeah, for something that should be very concerning. Oh, well, Dennis said that it would be out a little bit. That's okay.
Newman steals the samples and then leaves. Did you notice where Hammond says to check for him?
No.
He's like, Dennis has gone missing. Better check the vending machines.
He did say he was going for a Coke or something, though.
I think that's that workplace bullying.
Yeah, I'm going to get a soda. Does anyone want a soda?
Then we get another great transition where Hammond goes, "Where did the vehicle stop?" Cut to like the T-Rex enclosure.
Yeah.
Tim saying, Boo and scaring his sister. He was in the car the whole time. I don't know how she got scared by that.
Is this why you don't like her?
This and this alone. The iconic water tremor in the cup.
Super, super iconic. To the point where we've seen it in other movies, parody movies. Do you know what it is? Wayne's World 2. Wayne's World 2. They reference this. Yep.
It's such a great shot. Like, they even reuse it in this film later on with a puddle.
Yeah.
Really good at creating tension. The same as the goat going missing. Mm-hmm. It's what I was talking to you about before with Jaws, where it's like the monster's always scarier before you see it.
I'm surprised it took that long for the goat to go, though. Like, assumedly, because it goes from day to night. It's been an hour or two since they first placed the goat. We arrived just as the T-Rex has decided to eat the goat.
I think Grant even says he doesn't just want the goat tied up. He wants to hunt for it.
Yeah, there's that as well.
Maybe it got loose, and that's why he ate it. The lawyer runs off to the toilet.
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
Stay tuned for a callback to that line later. But I love that line because obviously at this point they haven't seen that the T-Rex is there, so they're still making jokes and laughing about it. But then the T-Rex breaks free of the enclosure and it looks awesome.
Yeah, this whole scene is just probably the one that everyone remembers the most, and for a good reason. It looks good, it's scary, the lighting.
I think the lighting is actually one of the really strong points for why it looks so good as well.
Yeah.
You see in sequels to the films, they don't look as good because a lot of them happen during the day.
Right.
But at nighttime with the rain, it masks a lot of the imperfections on it as well.
Yep.
They did say, though, that the actual animatronic version of the T-Rex, because of the rain machines, it filled up with water and it swelled and got really heavy, and then the mechanisms didn't work properly. So, this is why I don't like Lex. This sequence when she turns the torch on, and Tim quite clearly tells her to turn that torch off, but she leaves it on and shines it in the T-Rex's eyes.
Well, with that rationale, though, you also don't like Malcolm as a character, because Alan lights the flare, deters the T-Rex from the kids, but then Malcolm also lights the flare and decides to be a bit silly about it.
I do have that note.
Okay, right, okay. But
Malcolm plays hero for no reason.
He looks good doing it, though.
Look, you're very right there, but clearly Grant has thrown it, and it looks like the T-Rex is going to follow it into the enclosure, but Malcolm has to wave it around and run down the street with his buttons down to his navel.
And dripping wet, and they're like in that black shirt. And
He looks good. He does look good.
Yep, what a goose.
The lawyer dying in the toilet is great. First of all, because you don't really like the lawyer character, but it gives the film stakes. Like, this is the first character to die since the very opening of the film.
Yes.
So it shows you, no, we're going to kill some people off here. Like, anyone could die.
Yeah. I didn't hate the lawyer, though. I can understand why he is one of the first of a few victims to the dinosaurs. He's a little bit insipid, but he's not totally hated, whereas Dennis... Even then, we've already talked about it. We kind of like Dennis. Yeah.
I do like Dennis. He baits the dinosaurs.
This is where John Williams' score is really annoying and over the top for me. Stealing the embryos into the cans sequence is just like, just calm down with the score, mate. All right? Yeah.
I like him driving along and crashing into things. When he crashes into the sign and he doesn't know which way it was supposed to be pointing.
It's a bit comical.
It's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gets attacked. It had already spat poison at him, so he was a goner anyway, right?
Yeah.
Back at the T-Rex, they have to climb over the edge because Malcolm's down for the count. He's in the collapsed toilet. They have to climb over the edge. I don't quite understand. The enclosure has a massive drop-off. But where did that come from? There was no drop-off there before. When the goat was there, or even when the T-Rex was able to step out of it.
Yeah.
Seems like a big oversight.
They should just remake the entire film based on that one.
I'd be on board with that. The Jeep falling out of the tree, though, that's pretty cool. I like that sequence.
Yes.
I also like the thing that Timmy's concerned most about is that he's thrown up.
Yeah, I threw up.
But yeah, it's cool when they're climbing down the tree and it's falling after them. I probably would have just moved to the side, though.
Yeah.
Instead of climbing directly underneath where the car's falling. The dive at the bottom of the tree where the car falls on them.
Well, we're back in the car again.
Ali and Australian/British/South African guy turn up on a bit of a rescue mission trying to get the kids.
What I love at this scene is Ali's yelling at Alan. Reminded me of that meme from a few years ago.
Alan!
Alan! Alan! Alan! Alan! Alan! Al! Alan!
Oh dear. They're sifting through the rubble of the toilet block. Oh no. In all the commotion, Ian's shirt has come completely undone.
What a shame.
You are welcome, everybody. That's the best part of the film. Even when he's almost dead, he's still able to sling witty quips.
Remind me to thank John for a lovely weekend.
So he gets loaded into the Jeep, and then we get the callback to the shivering water.
Yes, with the puddle.
The puddle.
But it's in the T-Rex, footprint.
It's such a cool shot because you also see the reflection of Malcolm looking at the puddle in it. Really like that shot. And then
bit of a dino chase. And must go faster.
Yeah. And that's CGI Rex that comes out of the bushes behind him, but it looks great. Because you see...
That was a dinosaur from the Jurassic period, the CGI Rex.
CGI Rex. You see Ali kind of running to the Jeep, and then it comes out from the bushes, and then the continuous motion of the whole sequence looks really strong.
It does look really good.
The stakes just rise and rise and rise. Like, there are dips to kind of give a bit of brief reprieve to the audience, but generally speaking, it's just non-stop.
As I said, they do the little reminders of the beauty, like the Brachiosaurus is coming up, where Lex gets sneezed upon.
The Vegisaurus.
The Vegisaurus, yeah. It's a Vegisaurus, Lex. As I said, I feel like it's not just me that dislikes Lex. Tim pokes a lot of fun at her.
It's his older sister, though.
Yeah, I know, but he's like, oh, I hate trees. She goes, I don't mind trees. Well, you weren't in the last one. Or like when the dinosaur does sneeze on her, and then Tim's like, oh, great, now she won't try anything.
He knows his sister too well.
Alan kind of protecting the kids in the tree. It marks the fact that now Alan loves kids.
Yes.
All it took was a dinosaur attack. And they really do cement this by him throwing away his kid scaring claw. I won't be needing this anymore.
Even though you haven't grown to love Lex, I think Alan certainly has. And there's been reasons for it as well. And more so with Tim, or as Alan probably calls him, Mini Alan.
I shall call him Mini-Me.
They've grown enamored because there's lovable moments. Yeah.
And look, as I said, the actors do a great job. I don't dislike Lex, but she just does some frustrating things throughout the film.
Yeah.
I think maybe Hammond doesn't like him, though, because he's just chilling, eating in the next sequence. His kids are lost, and he's like, I might just sit down for a meal.
Well, he sent out Aussie, Brit, South
and they
African.
came back without them. And he's like, oh, well.
Yeah. When they first meet the Brachiosaurus...
Is the first one a Brontosaurus and then the Brachiosaurus is the God bless you?
Well, I think it's a brachio just because of the head shape. I think both of them are brachios. I may be wrong. If you care to correct us, the comments in the YouTube video are the right place to tell us the types of dinosaurs that each scene has.
And if we're spot on, just comment to tell us that.
Yeah, we like being told we were correct. But...
This is when we get the very important information that Lex is a hacker, which is going to come into play later on. It's probably not that necessary for her to be a hacker. That's just what they refer to her knowing how to use a computer.
Yeah, that's right.
She's a hacker.
My grandma calls me that all the time. Can you help me with this? You're a hacker, aren't you?
You're a hacker.
Yeah.
But yes, that's when they find the eggs and life found a way.
Yeah.
But then we get this cut to the sexy Malcolm shot. He's sitting with his shirt open, he's leaning over, his legs up.
This one became a meme, didn't it?
Oh, it definitely did.
Yeah.
I had this poster on my wall growing up. This is when we get the second Samuel L. Jackson hold on to your butts. Its inclusion in the film at all was odd to me, but twice?
There's probably a backstory to it that we don't know. Backstory, butts, get it?
Is that intentional?
No, it wasn't.
Next kind of majestic scene that we see is sort of like the stampede,
I
dinosaurs
love
running through.
this one.
Looks good.
Yeah.
I would say this is probably one of the, in terms of visual effects, weaker shots, but it still looks great.
It still looks great, and yeah, again, one that's memorable from your first watch as a kid. Yep.
They decide they're going to go reset the power, and Malcolm's talking to Hammond, and Hammond says, like, rides at amusement parks, like, malfunction all the time. And Malcolm says, yeah, but John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
Why would they set the power station so far away? If someone was coming to just do a bit of maintenance, you'd go, no worries, the power box is out there.
Yeah, but then we couldn't have this awesome Velociraptor sequence.
Yes.
Arnold goes out first. Samuel L. Jackson's character, Arnold, goes out first, and then he doesn't come back for a while, so Ellie has to go after him. While they're out there, the South African dude says he'll stay and monitor the raptors while she runs to the station. And how, like, suspenseful and terrifying is her just running to the station. Nothing happens, but it's engrossing.
Yeah.
It really speaks to how well Spielberg does suspense. Have you seen a film called Jewel?
Yeah, that's his first film. Jewel is great.
It's so good.
Yeah.
We should do Jewel.
Yep, there you go, suggestion.
Yeah, we're making a suggestion
of what you
students
suggest
for you to suggest to us.
Yeah. So Samuel L. Jackson's character, Arnold, he went out to disarm the...
He did. That's the joke you were going to go. Because I was going to say that Ellie finds Arnold, or should I say Arnold?
I like that as well. Yeah, so he is disarmed. Old Arnold is disarmed.
Samuel L. Jackson says that he likes to believe that Arnold survived. He's just riding around on a dinosaur without an arm on the island. He's just been living there riding on the back of dinosaurs.
That is a great image.
If his character had returned in the latest Jurassic World, that really would have made the film.
With like that John Williams iconic score coming through, like, you know, Samuel Jackson just one arm comes through the trees riding a brachio.
With a cowboy hat on. It turns out that despite the fact that he's thrown away his scare and claw, Grant still very much likes traumatizing children because he goes up to the electric fence and pretends to get electrocuted on it.
It's pretty mean what he does there.
Yeah.
I mean, Timmy's a fan of it.
That was great.
But I don't think it's wrong of Lexi to have been kind of upset by it.
I'm with her on this one.
Pretty mean, yeah.
Yeah, they're already in a pretty horrific situation. He doesn't need to pile on.
Yeah.
He thought he could give up torturing kids, but he's addicted. He goes straight back to it.
Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
I love this sequence because of how we, the audience, know the stakes of it, because it's cutting back and forth between Hammond trying to get the power on. Parallel editing, absolutely. Of all times for the guys to try and cross the fence, it's when they're putting the power back on.
And there's so many steps to it, so it's like, oh, they're getting closer and closer to it. He tells them, it's not a race, guys. And it's like, yes, they don't know that the power's about to come back on. But you do still have dinosaurs that are chasing you, so maybe we should go quickly.
Yeah, but we'll do it promptly, yes.
I always find it funny how Timmy gets electrocuted. Just shoots off the fence. Yeah. The effect is very amusing. And then his hair's sticking up for the rest of the film. In this sequence, one of the things that makes it so intense is there's always dynamic camera movement. So even something as basic as Hammond talking on the walkie-talkie, it does this great track up from the floor to above him as he's explaining it, just to be like, this is intense.
Yep.
Then the raptors attack Ellie after she turns the power back on, and she has to race out of there. This is the second limp of the film that I don't like. It's too exaggerated. It would only cause you more pain.
Oh, Ellie's running. Yes, okay.
It's too much. It's just a subtle limp would have done it. But then we get the clever girl sequence. It's very cool. It's a good line.
It's a great line. Yeah, because we are told in advance how velociraptors will deceive their prey. One of them coming up from the front, and then they'll come from the sides. Mm-hmm. So we're told early on. And so when it happens, it's like, they are clever girls.
It is really good that everything dinosaur-wise that happens in the film gets explained prior.
Yep.
Like the poison and all of that sort of stuff. We get told beforehand so that when it happens, we're like, oh my God, that's what they do.
And it's also just, again, going back to that whole representation of dinosaurs, we're being a bit educated. Now, I think there's been a bit of...
educated with Malcolm's hand on our shoulder.
Yeah, that's right. I think there are some people out there that have said, come out and fact check quite a bit of it, and some of it doesn't really stand up as accurate today, but we got to know a lot more about dinosaurs coming out of that film than we did going in.
The big one that people say, like, oh, the dinosaurs should have had feathers all over them.
Alan refers to them being closer to birds at the start in the initial dig scene.
Yeah.
And everyone laughs at him, and then he's like, no. Notice the backbone, whatever. There is that reference to they don't quite know everything.
But there's also, you're making a movie and you want it to have a specific look. Like, I believe the raptors were designed to look like a different type of dinosaur. I can't remember the name of it, but the name didn't sound very threatening.
CGI Rex?
No, not CGI Rex. But they ended up designing it to look like that type of dinosaur, but then still calling them velociraptors because raptors seem, it's like a scarier name. I reckon Timmy probably shouldn't have come back from that electric shock.
As in he should have died off. Timmy should just be dead.
Well, I don't want Timmy to be dead, but I don't think you're coming back from a shock like that.
No, I don't think so either. Like, I certainly, knowing what I know now, like, that kind of shock would be an electrocution to the point of death. Yeah.
What do you mean by knowing what you know? Are you an electric shock expert now?
No. Well, the fact that the reality of how many volts are passing through that fence.
Yeah.
Like as a kid, you just go, oh yeah, cool. Like his hair's now standing on end. But like as an adult, you go, wait a sec. If these fences are set up to keep a T-Rex and co caged, surely it's not just a mild shock that kind of makes your hair stand on end. It's one that kills you.
Yeah, for sure. Great name for a band, Raptors in the Kitchen. Yeah. This is a very cool sequence.
So this is when they are eating the feast and like, you
get the jelly wobbling on the spoon.
the jelly wobble. I love this for sure.
It's very cool.
Yep.
I really love the shot where Lex is in the cabinet and she's trying to close the door of the cabinet and the Velociraptor's running at her, but he's actually running at her reflection.
Yeah, cool shot.
When they actually enter the kitchen sequence, it's also another one of those great transitions when she's like, unless they've figured out how to open doors, and then the door handle just turns.
Cleverer girls.
That's it. And this is the last time I'm going to bring it up. We get my third and final shit limp of the film.
Shit limp.
Also a good name for a band, shit limp. Timmy in the kitchen. He's also really exaggerated with his limp. And then in the next shot, he's running normally. So does he have a limp or doesn't he? We need a shit limp soundbite because it's going to come up a lot.
You walk over, but you're limping back.
So they all come back together and they run into like the control room. And Grant clearly tells Ellie to boot up the door. And then she comes over to help him to hold the door. Well, they can't boot it up now. Or can they? Because Lex is a hacker. Mr. Hammond, the phones are working. And I love that he asks, are the children all right? Like he cares? Yeah, all right. The dinosaur breaks through the glass and we get the projection of like the DNA patterns on the dinosaur.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Very, very cool. Yep.
They have to go through the roof and Lex falls through the roof panels and is hanging on. There's a cool detail about this. It was a stunt double that did this and she wasn't supposed to look at the camera, but just because it's a scary sort of thing that she's doing, she accidentally, as she swings down, looks directly into the lens of the camera. And they had to do like a face replacement, which is very early to be doing something like that.
Yeah.
If you like slow it down, it looks very funny. It's a cool sequence. So they get back to the main lobby area where the big skeleton is. The original ending of the movie, Grant was supposed to puppeteer the T-Rex skeleton to defeat the raptors. This was genuinely how the movie was going to end. Yeah, he puppeteers it and he kills the raptors using the big T-Rex skeleton because it's got all the wires hanging off it.
Yeah.
I'm glad they changed their mind on this. And they started the trend of the T-Rex being the unsung hero of the film.
Nature finds a way.
Nature does find a way. And you get that great shot where the T-Rex kind of roars and the banner falls down and it says, when dinosaurs ruled the earth.
Yep, awesome.
That's the money shot right there. And then it sort of ends. They jump on the helicopter very quickly. A quick wrap up, as you like.
It is a quick wrap up. I did love that.
They jump on the helicopter and they fly off into the sunset. Now, for years and years, I would watch Jurassic Park on loop from like an old VHS tape. My dad had taped it off the TV. And it used to always frustrate me that it would get to this end part and they'd get on the helicopter and then it would cut to an ad break. And when it came back from the ad break, it was just the sunset shot directed by Steven Spielberg.
How odd.
And I would always sit through that ad break and then go, oh, that's right, there's nothing more in the film. I really should have learnt my lesson the first couple of times. But yeah, it's a very odd thing to do, to give you an ad break right at the end just for the credits.
Yep.
So overall, what do you think?
Great film.
Yeah, it's
we
awesome,
know it's
isn't
a
it?
great film. Looking back on it at the age of whatever I am versus when I was.
The age of whatever you are, do you not know your age?
I do. I'm a bit more critical on it now. There are parts of it that do come across a bit clunky. But for the most part, yeah, it certainly got a box tick for me.
Oh, for sure. And as I said, like I preface this by saying, I'm going to poke some holes or make fun of some moments, but I love it. I really love it. And nostalgia probably plays a big role in that, but also just the fact, I think it has aged very well.
Yeah.
You will see that because our next segment that we're going to be doing is our ranking of all of the films of the term, and it's pretty high up on my list.
Our rankings are going to be pretty similar. So we've got 10 films to talk about.
We do, our top 10. Well, not top 10, some of them are at the bottom.
The bottom 5 for me are just a slew of mediocrity for me. And I found it hard to rank the bottom 5 because I don't, like there was just like an even amount of whateverness to them. So I don't know if I've got it accurate in a sense as to what my 10 to 6 is.
It's okay. I'm not going to hold you to it. If you decide to shift these rankings after we've recorded, that's quite all right. I do feel bad because obviously all of these films were recommended by students and some of them really, really love these films. Just because a film is ranked at the bottom of our list doesn't mean it's not a good film. It just means it wasn't for us.
Hey, there's that. And also I have a feeling that our top films, the students in reverse would say, no, that's boring. Yeah, like they did before they had even seen the film, because of just the fact that it is an old film.
Yes,
anyway.
that is very true. And last term we did also have an opportunity to put out a bit of a poll and get our student rankings. We haven't been organised enough to do that this time around, but I'm curious to see how we differ on these. Coming in at number 10 for me was Hook.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. Hook sits a bit higher for me, but number 10 for me was Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, look, fair enough. There's a bit of a mix of how I ranked these films. So there's how much I enjoyed them on this viewing, how much I enjoy them overall. There's nostalgia factors. So there's a lot that comes into play for this. But for me, by far, my least enjoyable viewing experience was Hook. I think I even messaged you while I was watching it, talking about how much I was struggling to get to the end of it, because it wasn't ticking the boxes for me.
It's a slog for sure. I think Hook sits a bit higher for me because of nostalgia factor.
For sure.
Revenge of the Sith for me was a slog to the point where I had to pause it and come back to it the next day.
Right.
I just could not sit through the whole thing.
Yeah, and look, you're talking Revenge of the Sith having not watched other Star Wars films. You've seen some Star Wars films, but not all of them.
And I'm definitely not a Star Wars fan.
Hey, it's Sharky again. I love Star Wars.
Oh, put in that Sharky soundbite. Yeah. I knew what you were getting at there. I'm obviously a big Star Wars fan, not so much these days with the ones that are being released, but certainly when Revenge of the Sith came out, I was really into it. So definitely nostalgia plays a big role in that being higher in my rankings. I also just feel like when we were discussing it, Hook felt like the one that we were most critical of.
Yeah, certainly was.
Anyway, number 9, I had The Iron Giant.
Okay, I had Zathura at number 9.
Okay.
Yeah, probably for similar reasons. Like these films were so-so for us. Yeah.
Iron Giant and Zathura are pretty much back to back. So
Yeah.
number 9 and number 8.
Yeah.
And I think, they were okay, but that's it.
Yeah.
Nothing special about them. When we discussed them, I said it was good to revisit them because I hadn't seen them in a very, very long time. But I think it'll now probably be a long time before I see them again.
Yeah.
If ever.
Yeah, I don't think I would be pressing play on these films ever again. Speaking of which, my number 8 would be What Lies Beneath.
Ah.
What Lies Beneath had some parts that I like. Certainly that final climax scene in the bathtub, we talked about it on the podcast, is really cool. And there's other parts of it that I like. But yeah, overall, it's just not a great film for me.
Also, you've answered the question, what lies beneath? It's Zathura and Revenge of the Sith.
Yes.
So number 7 for me is Revenge of the Sith. The nostalgia value got it this high on the list. I certainly didn't have that much enjoyment in comparison to some of the other ones when I was watching it through this time, but it's got some fun moments. We were talking about the Ewan McGregor charm. It's the darkest of the prequel trilogy, and that really kind of sold me on it. Even if it feels like Anakin's shift to the dark side is quite quick, it still feels very cool to see him take such a dark role on.
Number 7 for me was Iron Giant. So, like I said, in that mesh of Zathura, What Lies Beneath, Iron Giant, and Hook as well, while we're at it, that was number 6 for me.
6 for you?
Yeah. So that rounds up my bottom half. I didn't hate them. I certainly won't rewatch them, though. Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah.
I think you're going to be disappointed that this is ranked lower than What Lies Beneath, but Life of Pi was number 6 for me. I really liked it. I think I said to you at the time that I was surprised at how much I liked it because it's not my kind of film. And I think that's probably where I come back to how it ranks here now.
Yeah.
It's a really, really well-made film. I love the symbolism. The storytelling's great. Themes and messages behind it, really, really good. Even the effects, very, very impressive. But because it's just not my type of genre, then I couldn't put it any higher on the list.
Yep. So number 5 for me is Jurassic Park. Now, that's not to say that I think of it as a poor film, far from. I just have 4 other films that I rank higher than it. It's a great film. We've just talked about it for a long time. Going back to it this time around made me go, oh, there's some bits that are, so-so on it. Overall, Jurassic Park's a great film. So that's number 5 for me.
Number 5 for me was What Lies Beneath. I admitted when we did it that it wasn't nearly as good as I had remembered it being, but it's still right up my alley in terms of the horror elements in it, the thriller elements, plus it has one Harrison Ford in it, which is always going to help boost its rankings in my books. Plus, Michelle Pfeiffer, she was amazing. Her performance in it is really good.
The Pfeiffer performance.
Yes.
Yeah, was really strong. When you're facing Harrison Ford, you're obviously going to shine through, right? So number 4 for me is Life of Pi. I, especially on this rewatch for the podcast, which allowed me to connect more with the thematic ideas. As anyone who's listened to our podcast on it, all 30 people, I think, that's listened to that one.
Yes, that one did not rank as high.
Yeah, I just really liked the ideas that were coming across in it. I really engaged thoroughly on the rewatch to the point where it has made number 4 for me on the top 10.
Yeah, number 4 for me is Jurassic Park. Well, you think some of the elements of it are now extinct. I still would hold it in high regard. Again, I think nostalgia probably did play a bit of a factor in this. There's only really one film that ranks higher on the list that doesn't have elements of nostalgia in it, and I think that sort of speaks to how well made the film is, and that will be my number 3. That's RRR.
As is mine. So I'm the same with RRR.
Or just R.
Yes, the pirate version of this film.
Well, you said it all at the time. I had not seen it before watching it for the podcast. It's just fun, right? It's a cool story. The action is awesome. I love the bromancy side of things. The Natu Natu / Nacho Nacho dance. It's all good. I really, really liked it.
I was very pleased that this was the one I put forward on the term break for you to watch. Pretty confident that you were going to enjoy it. A few other people have since watched it and said as much as well. We've turned a few people onto it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So RRR. Leaving us our top 2. And
I agonized over the order of these 2.
I didn't.
I think I know which way you're leaning.
Maybe some recency bias on what I went with on number 1 because we only talked about it last week. Number 2 for me is Mission Impossible.
So number 2 for me is North by Northwest.
Yeah.
So 1 and 2 for both of us, Mission Impossible and North by Northwest, just in the reverse order. And look, I could flip back and forth between that. Had it been Charade instead of North by Northwest, it would have firmly landed itself in the number 1 position. But it was really tough. They were both great watches. I reckon 2 of the best podcasts we've done because you can just tell how enthusiastic we are when we're talking about them.
Yeah, all 3 of my top 3, RRR, Mission Impossible and North by Northwest. The distinguishing factor for me is if someone today said, I haven't seen these films, or someone came up to me and said, do you want to watch these films? I would just say yes. I would rewatch them right now. That's how I determine what makes one of my favorite films. And so Mission Impossible and North by Northwest certainly fall into instant rewatch for me. RRR would be as well. Whereas everything else after that, I'd be like, oh, I saw it recently. You know, I wouldn't be so quick to say yes to a rewatch. But
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And if you are listening to this and those particular ones you hadn't seen yet, I really do encourage you to check those three out. We both hold them in a very high regard. Go check them out and then go listen to the podcasts on them.
Yep.
That does bring us to our Weekly Watches segment. Weekly watches, weekly watches. I love you. How many weekly watches do you have for this week?
3 films and a couple of TV shows. Started my weekend with Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. So when I messaged you saying that's what I had chosen to put on my Friday night, you said, it doesn't seem like your...
I just said it doesn't seem like your kind of film.
Yeah, and look...
which I probably shouldn't have said, because you're pretty diverse in the types of films that you watch.
That's what I responded with, which is I do try and keep it pretty eclectic with what I put out there. The reason I went to this film is there's a podcast I listen to called Film Spotting.
Based on Train Spotting, I imagine?
I don't know. Maybe. It's been going for like 25 years now. It's they're Chicago-based reviewers, but they just have a really good selection of films that they review. They really cover all bases. And they did a mid-year podcast of the best films of 2023 so far, and this film topped a lot of their lists, with their top 5. So I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. Yeah, sure enough, it was a great watch. So it's a very, what they call a small film, where there's nothing grand about it, no action. It's based on an old book by Judy Blume, based in the 70s. A young girl's turbulent coming of age and all the kind of stuff she goes through when she moves town. I don't want to say too much. It's just a fun, heartwarming film. Really good acting in it, laugh out loud moments. So I could see why it's topping some lists.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
My first film is a film called Hypnotic, which we actually discussed the trailer for it in a previous podcast. First up, it's a tight 90.
Tight like a tiger.
Thank goodness. Also,
really? Okay.
Yeah. It's the Robert Rodriguez film with Ben Affleck. Do you remember discussing the trailer for it?
Yeah.
It did not land for me.
Oh, that's a shame, because I love Ben Affleck and I love Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the John Woo film Paycheck with Ben Affleck?
No.
Okay, so I like Paycheck, but it's not very well received by most people. It's very cheesy and over-the-top action kind of thing. This feels like that, but just far worse. I thought it was going to be Christopher Nolan-esque in terms of really high concept, but not really. It fell very flat for me. I didn't care about the characters. The way the narrative was told was pretty bland. And even like the twists and turns that they try to present feel very A, forced, but B, obvious.
Yeah.
So yeah, just nothing about it really landed for me. It felt like a bit of a slog getting through it, even though it was, in fact, a tight 90.
Yeah. The second film for me was a film called Showing Up by a director called Kelly Reichardt, who has done a few films that I've liked. She pairs up again with Michelle Williams on this one.
Okay.
It's about an artist based in Portland who is kind of just working out life and working out herself. It's a very slow-paced film. It's very much just a slice of life. Really cool acting. I didn't enjoy it as much as Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, but it was still another recent film that I enjoyed.
There you go. My next one is Blowout, which you recommended for me to watch after we talked Mission Impossible, because it is directed by Brian De Palma.
Yeah.
And all it made me want to do is go through Brian De Palma's catalogue of films and watch them all. There's another one on my list called Body Double. My dad recommended it to me.
Yep.
He said if I like this, then it's right up my alley.
I haven't seen Body Double, but that's on my to-watch list as well. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's on SBS On Demand.
Right, okay, cool.
Want to watch it? But John Travolta, John Lithgow is really good. Master of suspense. I'd say the concept is pretty basic at first, but then there's lots of plot twists and turns along the way. It's just really good. And John Lithgow as a villainous character is always really, really great. I think he's super strong as a villain character. Like, he's got great comedic chops as well, but as a villain, he's very menacing. It was great already, but the ending of it, which I won't go into any explicit detail about, but the ending of it was exactly what I wanted from the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love about that film also the kind of behind the scenes technical elements of filmmaking that they use. His character is an audio engineer. De Palma obviously utilizes his love and knowledge of filmmaking as part of the narrative as well.
I also really like the use of split screen, which kind of pairs with the cutting of film. And often he uses the split screen in the moments where John Travolta is cutting the sound clips and piecing them together.
I'm glad you loved it. Like I'm a big fan of Blowout. So.
Great recommendation.
Last film for me was Dogville from 2003. So this was a pending watch for quite some time. It's directed by Lars von Trier. This one stars Nicole Kidman. It's actually got a great ensemble cast.
Is this the taped outline?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah. So certainly not a tight 90. This one's nearly 3 hours long. And I had actually tried to watch this previously and just wasn't in the mood for it. It really is bleak and dark the way it turns. I knew it would be. Like, if you know Lars von Trier films, that's where he always goes with his films. The film is made on a soundstage where it's just a taped off town and it's more about the acting. So it's kind of presented to us kind of as a stage play, but not. But yeah, really dependent on some really solid acting, which Paul Bettany, Nicole Kidman, Stellan Skarsgård, all the actors in the film are just ferocious with their delivery. So you want to go down a dark hole of understanding the human condition, Dogville.
Yeah, nice.
Yep.
My final film is Shadow of a Doubt. It's a Hitchcock film. So after our big discussion of Hitchcock, I went back to my list. I was all talk last week. I said I've seen most of his films now. I haven't seen most of his films, it turns out. I think I've seen about 15 or so. This one probably makes 16 now. Hey, I really liked it. I would say it's probably not amongst my favorite Hitchcock films, but the characters were phenomenal. The narrative was okay, pretty simple. There wasn't as many kind of twists and turns as
any big names
North by
in the
Northwest. Look, there probably are.
Okay.
I just don't know who they are. Big names for the time, I'd imagine.
Sure.
Yeah, just really strong actors and a very sinister vibe throughout it. Great filmmaking and storytelling. So I'm excited to continue my journey down that path.
Cool.
I know you're going to be doing some Hitchcock films in the
upcoming
next
weeks, for sure. Yep. So a couple of TV shows for me. The main one I've got to talk about is an Australian show called The Clearing, starring Miranda Otto.
Oh, I talked about this on a Tantalising Trailer.
Ah, there you go. And Guy Pearce. So the show itself is kind of semi-premised in like some actual historical events that happened in Victoria.
Ah, okay.
So there's a doco on it called The Family, which I highly recommend. I saw that at the cinemas, in fact, out in when I used to live in Belgrave, and Belgrave isn't too far from where it all went down.
Right.
Yeah, so really kind of creepy to know that this kind of stuff's in your backyard. The show itself was shot at Lake Eildon, always up for trying out some Australian cinema and TV. This one is pretty good. I've only watched the first episode. I'll certainly keep watching it. Kind of like a cult following, these kids get kidnapped and they're part of this cult. Not too much has been revealed. I don't know how much of it's going to be similar to what actually happened. But yeah, that's The Clearing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
My TV weekly watches are all ones that I've mentioned previously, and I won't just keep doing this week after week. I'm not going to constantly talk about ones that are a continued watch, but the only reason I bring them up now is because I feel like for all three of them, I have something new to add about them. So big Succession watching binge, which it's on binge too, so that's what you're supposed to do. But Jave has been watching it and talking to me about it in my media class, and he was starting to get further ahead of it than I am. So we can't continue our discussions unless I keep up with him. So
feel free to continue the discussions with me, because I tried to get back on with it this week as well.
Oh, yes?
And I only got to the end of the second episode and I'm like, this is not for me.
Well, I can't continue discussions then if you haven't watched it, can I?
Because I'm saying I'm not going to watch it.
Right. Yeah, well, look, fair enough. I go through phases. Like, it's taking me longer to get through it than it usually would for a season. I have to kind of take breaks from it.
Yeah.
But I was super engrossed, so I ended up watching, I reckon, at least a season of it over the weekend.
Look, it's critically acclaimed. People are loving it. I was actually laboring through the second episode. I'm like, what don't I like about this show? And everyone seems to love it, and I don't. I couldn't really pinpoint it, but it's just, it's one of those things where it's not for me. So you're enjoying it?
I am enjoying it.
Yep.
In contrast to that, though, I finished Barry. And it pains me to say this, but I was not satisfied with the ending of the series.
People have heard us talk about Barry quite a bit. It's one of my favourite shows of recent years. I, too, was a bit disenchanted with the final episodes.
And you withheld your opinion on it because you didn't want it to colour my...
Yeah, and I won't say too much about it here either. I would really implore our listeners to check it out. As an overall series, the show is just one of the best. Like you, I'm going to talk about a couple of other shows that I've mentioned before, so I'll quickly mention them. But I have been continuing to watch season 2 of Love Me, which is a Melbourne-based show. It's kind of that lighthearted drama in this vein of like your Offspring or something like that. Not normally a show I'd gravitate towards, but Hugo Weaving's in it, and I always find him really great on screen. Celia Pacquola is in it, who I absolutely adore as a comedian. So she's really good in that as well. The other show is Rami, which I've mentioned a few times, about an Egyptian American who is living in New York and kind of struggling with his multiple identities around his Muslim identity, but also trying to just be a young, modern kind of person living in New York. Very, very funny show. So I'm into season 2 on that now. So that's Rami.
Okay, cool. My final weekly watch was The Walking Dead. As I said, I've mentioned it before. I only bring it up because I have something new to say. Last week, I believe, or maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, I said I'd reached the point that I'd gotten to in the season previously and remembered why I stopped watching it. But I did persist, and I must say it came back around again. Much like if you are listening to I'm Gonna Be by the Proclaimers on loop. When it gets to that chorus, you're ready to go again. I'm enthralled again and want to know what's going to happen next. And it does have peaks and troughs as a show, but I also have just gotten to a moment in the series which inevitably when you've gone this long without watching it, you hear things about major plot points that happen in the show. And so I did know that this particular event, which I won't go into detail about, but this particular event was coming up and it was going to happen. Nothing could have prepared me for how I felt when I actually saw it happen. It's bizarre. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and yet when it still happened, I felt traumatized. Genuinely, you would not believe how scarred I felt watching it.
I have a feeling I know what you're saying.
As in, you've seen the sequence?
No, I haven't seen the sequence.
Okay.
I know what event you're referring to.
Yeah, it was just the violence behind it. It was really, really in your face and very, very full on. It hit hard. So it's great. It means the show is really good in terms of how they do that to make you emote and feel the way that you do. But it was very full on. So I am engaged, but who knows? Next week maybe I won't be again.
Yeah, right. So that's Weekly Watches wrapped up, I believe.
It sure is, which brings us on to Tantalising Trailers. And with that, our new jingle, which you've not heard the completed product. So
here we go.
This is for you.
Trailers. Tantalizing films. Trailers. Don't know if we will be a fan. How will it be? We'll know in time.
Good fun.
Yes, our Tantalising Trailers segment. I've got 3 on my list this week. What about you?
I've got 2, and they're ones that I've spoken about before.
Oh, okay.
I actually went on the hunts to kind of fill out the list a bit, but there wasn't anything that really jumped out at me. They released a full-length trailer for these 2 films, so that's why I'm still going to mention them.
Talk to Me?
Talk to Me is one of them. Yeah.
That one jumps out at you.
Yeah, well, yeah, more ways than one. So let's talk about Talk to Me. This was one, when they released the teaser trailer, I was already excited. This is A24 coming and making a film in Australia.
Yes.
And it's a horror film that is directed by a brother duo who have not gotten to make a feature film before. On the look of it, especially from this full-length trailer, they're going to smash it out of the park.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. I told you I wasn't that engaged with the first trailer of Talk to Me, but this one brought me right in.
I am so excited at and I'm building it up, and I know I shouldn't, and I always regret it when I do this, but stuff it's happening, so I can't help this. But I am so excited at the idea that we're going to have a film that's Australian made that is really good. I haven't been impressed by an Australian film since The Nightingale. I don't know if you've ever seen The Nightingale. That was released in 2019, I think. And I keep an eye out on Australian films. I try and check out whatever's doing the rounds in terms of good ones. And yeah, I have a feeling we're going to get a good Australian horror film that maybe will set up opportunity for more great Australian cinema to be made.
You were impressed by that Australian film from last week, The Verdict, was it?
Yes.
Sorry, Riley. My first one is Sympathy for the Devil, a Nick Cage film. It just looks like fun. It looks like a lot of fun. Nick Cage sitting in the back of someone's car, holding them at gunpoint and making them do things, essentially.
Oh, okay.
And it looks like they basically didn't even give him a script. They just said, just be Nick Cage. He's doing all these classic woos and funny facial expressions. And yeah, I don't know if he's actually supposed to be the devil in it, but he seems a very sinister type character. He's wearing a nice maroon blazer.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks like he's having a bit of fun. So I reckon I'll probably check that one out. Not at the movies, but in fact, it may not even be coming out at the movies, but yeah, I'll give it a watch. The
other one for me was Poor Things. Like what I did with Mission Impossible coming out, I went and watched all the preceding Mission Impossibles. I'm going to go back and watch all of Yorgos Lanthimos' preceding films because this trailer, more than the teaser trailer, really showcases what I love about his cinema, the look that he goes for. So this is Emma Stone playing a Frankenstein-esque character, shows a bit more quirk to the film. Shows a bit more about Willem Dafoe's character, and so
is this Mark Ruffalo as well?
Mark Ruffalo,
yeah.
Rami Youssef, who's in that show that I mentioned, Rami, before. I have a feeling this film will top my films of the year list.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I am that excited for it.
Even above Indiana Jones.
I mean, there's some great films like Dune 2 is also coming out later this year. So, you and Daria are very excited about that.
Yes.
But yeah, Poor Things. Yeah,
cool.
Yep.
My final one is a post-apocalyptic TV series called Twisted Metal. And it wasn't your standard trailer. It was, now they kind of release scenes and use that for advertising. It looked like a bit of fun. It's kind of like this leather-clad, kind of like the Gimp from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
He's battling Anthony Mackie in an old slot machines kind of ballroom. And it's just a bit of witty banter, and they're fighting. And then Anthony Mackie kind of gets him on side and says that he'd like to watch his whatever performance he's doing. Like, it just looks like a bit of fun, but I think we'll get lots of interesting characters. I'm a big fan of post-apocalyptic TV series. I don't know if you ever saw Daybreak on Netflix.
No.
That's really fun, but only lasted the one season. So maybe this will fill that void.
Cool.
Yeah. With that, we have reached the end of quite a lengthy end-of-term podcast. We had a few extra segments in the mix. It's been a great term. I do want to thank our loyal listeners, but also just the students that come along to Film Club each week. I mean, if they're not listening, they don't get the thanks, I guess.
I also want to thank you, Mr. Brown.
Oh, that's unnecessary.
For giving me the opportunity to talk film on a weekly basis. Obviously, we're both very passionate about it, and getting to sit down and have these conversations is a lot of fun. So thank you. And also thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for all the editing work you put into it, especially with the sound bites as well that we've decided over the last few episodes to include.
Yeah, they're here to stay, it would seem. We are going to take a few weeks off now. This was our last one for the term, and it looks like we'll probably take the break over the holidays as well, but we should be returning next term bigger and better than ever. The obligatory reminders to like, subscribe, share it around. Please comment about Mr. Whittle and I's lovely duet work on the new jingle. We would love to stick around all day, but when you gotta go, you gotta go. I told you to come back. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.